Humanity had always been a minor player in the grand cosmic scheme. For millennia, the galaxy's most ancient and advanced species dominated the stars, enforcing strict laws that governed everything, from trade to warfare. These alien empires had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, but none had ever truly posed a threat to their dominance. Wars in the galaxy were formalized affairs, fought with the same measured approach that characterized these civilizations' daily lives. Battles were calculated, with rules and protocols in place to prevent any one species from being utterly annihilated. It had been this way for centuries, perhaps millennia, and most of the galaxy had grown comfortable with the system. The long peace that followed had lulled them into a false sense of security. That was until the Verith Dominion returned. The Verith were a nightmare from the galaxy's distant past. A species so ruthless and advanced that even the most powerful empires had once banded together to wipe them out. They had been presumed extinct for millennia, but now, without warning, they resurfaced. Their assault was swift, merciless, and devastating. Planets fell in days, star systems were wiped clean of life, and the established galactic powers found themselves completely unprepared. The Council of Ancient Species scrambled to respond, but their slow, bureaucratic nature proved to be their downfall. The Verith didn't care about rules. They didn't follow any codes. They fought with the kind of brutal efficiency that hadn't been seen in thousands of years. Whole civilizations were threatened, and the galaxy trembled at the realization that the very rules they'd followed so faithfully had left them vulnerable. Amid this chaos, the Galactic Council had no choice but to seek outside help, to call upon a species that had been largely ignored up until now, humanity. Humans, a relatively young race, had only recently made their presence known on the galactic stage. While other species were content to view humanity as little more than a curiosity, an unpredictable and volatile newcomer, there were whispers that Earth had developed frighteningly fast in terms of technology and warfare. The Council was reluctant to ask for help, but desperation has a way of breaking down old barriers. The first message to Earth was sent not out of respect, but necessity. Humanity's leaders were summoned to an emergency meeting of the Council, a gathering that no human had ever attended. The Council's offer was clear: technology, resources, and the promise of cooperation in exchange for humanity's participation in the war. But Earth's leaders were wary. The humans saw the Galactic Council for what it was, a fractured, slow-moving political machine, weighed down by the very traditions that had made them so powerful in the first place. The Council's promises of support meant little when humanity knew they were being asked to fight a war that wasn't their own. The Verith Dominion was a threat, but Earth was still distant, still untouched. Some argued that it was better to stay out of the fight, to let the older species handle the mess they had allowed to happen. But the Verith Dominion wasn't content with conquering a few systems. Their goal was the extinction of all sentient life. It was only a matter of time before Earth became a target, and humanity would either be ready or they wouldn't. Humanity agreed to enter the war, but on their own terms. They didn't need the Council's bureaucracy. They didn't need to be held back by outdated notions of how war should be fought. If the Verith Dominion was an enemy beyond the Council's understanding, then humanity would fight without the restrictions that had left these ancient species vulnerable. What the Galactic Council didn't realize was that humanity had been preparing for this moment. Their development in spacefaring technology had been rapid, but more than that, humanity had perfected the art of warfare. Years of conflict on Earth had taught them a brutal lesson: survival came at any cost. As humanity ramped up for war, the other galactic species were stunned by the speed at which the human fleets were mobilized. While they had expected a slow, steady integration into the galactic defense, humanity's military infrastructure was already years ahead of what the Council had assumed. Secretly, Earth had been preparing for the worst. Not because they feared the Verith, but because history had taught them that peace was never a guarantee. Humanity didn't just join the war, they took it over. Within weeks, human fleets were at the front lines, fighting alongside the Council's forces. But it didn't take long for the differences in combat philosophy to become apparent. The galactic species fought in a predictable, measured manner, relying on tradition and protocol. They were used to wars being fought slowly, over the course of decades or even centuries. Humanity had no such luxury. Earth's forces operated with a level of efficiency and brutality that shocked their alien allies. Where the Council hesitated, humanity attacked. Where ancient strategies called for caution, humans pushed forward with bold and reckless tactics. Their ships, smaller and more agile, outmaneuvered the massive, lumbering fleets of the Council. They adapted faster, learned faster, and most of all, fought like a species that had everything to lose. The first time humanity saved a Council fleet from destruction, the aliens were slow to acknowledge it. There was too much pride at stake, too much tradition to swallow the fact that a young, upstart species had just outclassed them in their own war. But the truth was undeniable. The Verith, who had swept through the galaxy with ease, found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The Verith Dominion had risen from the ashes of history, confident that the galaxy would crumble before them. But they hadn't anticipated the one thing that no ancient civilization could have predicted: humanity was not afraid of them. Humanity's entrance into the war was anything but quiet. The ancient empires, long accustomed to their slow, calculated style of conflict, were thrown into disarray by the sheer unpredictability of human tactics. The Verith Dominion, which had been rolling over established defenses with ease, was caught completely off guard. They had faced organized opposition before, but nothing like this. Humans fought with a ferocity and innovation that baffled their enemies. The Galactic Council, having once doubted whether humanity could be of any use, now found themselves dependent on their unpredictable allies. While the Council's forces still followed protocols, sticking to well-established tactics, humans ignored the rules, opting for a more aggressive and flexible approach. It wasn't just brute force, they combined it with creative strategies that were alien to the galaxy's older powers. In the early stages of humanity's involvement, the alien races would watch in disbelief as human fleets engaged the Verith. The ancient empires had been waging war for millennia, yet their playbook had remained largely unchanged. They focused on grand fleets, massive ships that were expensive and difficult to maneuver. These ships were meant to project power and establish dominance, but in reality, they were slow and predictable. The Verith had exploited this, easily outflanking and outgunning the Council's ponderous vessels. But humanity was different. Their ships were smaller, faster, and more nimble. Instead of forming rigid battle lines, human fleets spread out, surrounding the Verith from multiple angles, cutting off their supply lines and striking vulnerable points with precision. It wasn't just their technology that stood out, it was their tactics. Earth's military leaders understood that war wasn't about following the old rules, it was about survival, adaptation, and outthinking the enemy. Guerrilla warfare, electronic sabotage, psychological tactics, these were things the Verith had never encountered before. They were used to overpowering their enemies through sheer force, but the humans refused to play by the same rules. They employed tactics designed to disorient and confuse. For the first time, the Verith were on the defensive. In one crucial battle, a Verith fleet, renowned for its ruthless efficiency, found itself outmaneuvered by a human-led task force. The Verith were accustomed to facing enemies who followed predictable patterns. But the humans didn't stick to any one approach. They used diversionary tactics, feigned retreats, and cloaked attacks, forcing the Verith into a battle of attrition that they were ill-prepared for. By the time the Verith realized what was happening, they were surrounded and cut off from reinforcements. The Council was left stunned. This level of adaptability and creativity was something they had not expected. The humans weren't just another species to throw into the grinder, they were turning the war in their favor. But it wasn't just their ships and tactics that made humanity a force to be reckoned with. It was their mindset. Unlike the older empires, who fought to preserve their existing way of life, humans fought like a species with nothing to lose. Their existence had always been precarious, with Earth having weathered countless wars and disasters. Now, thrust into a galactic war, humanity fought as if the fate of their entire species was at stake. And in a way, it was. Earth's leaders and military strategists knew that losing this war wasn't an option. If the Verith were allowed to continue unchecked, it wouldn't just be the ancient empires that would fall. Earth would eventually be next. That sense of urgency and desperation fueled every decision they made. Where the Council hesitated, humanity pushed forward. Where the Council saw obstacles, humanity saw opportunities. And as the human fleets continued to win battle after battle, the galaxy began to notice. The other species, once dismissive of Earth's capabilities, started to see the humans in a different light. What had once been viewed as recklessness was now seen as bravery. What had been called unpredictability was now hailed as genius. Humanity wasn't just holding its own, they were leading the charge. Yet, there was an underlying tension that began to build within the Council. While they were grateful for humanity's contributions, they couldn't ignore the growing influence of this young species. In just a few short months, humans had gone from being reluctant participants to the vanguard of the resistance. The ancient empires, long the dominant forces in the galaxy, found themselves increasingly sidelined. This shift in power dynamics wasn't lost on anyone. Humanity had proven itself indispensable, but with that came a new level of fear. What would happen when the war was over? Would humanity simply go back to its quiet corner of the galaxy, content to play a minor role? Or would they use their newfound power to reshape the galactic order in their image? For now, those questions remained unanswered. The war with the Verith was far from over, and humanity showed no signs of slowing down. Their ingenuity seemed boundless. The more the Verith adapted, the faster the humans countered. Even when the Verith began to copy human tactics, Earth's forces stayed one step ahead, always finding new ways to outsmart their enemy. In many ways, it wasn't just humanity's technological and tactical superiority that set them apart. It was their ability to learn and adapt in real time. The Council's forces had grown complacent, relying on strategies that had worked for centuries. Humanity, on the other hand, thrived in the chaos of war. They learned from every battle, improving and evolving as the war dragged on. The Verith, who had once seemed unstoppable, were now on the back foot. Their initial advantage had evaporated, thanks in large part to humanity's relentless pressure. The galaxy, which had trembled at the thought of the Verith's resurgence, now trembled at the thought of what humanity might become. The ancient species had witnessed something extraordinary, the rise of a species that didn't just fight to survive, but fought to win. Humanity wasn't content to simply push the Verith back. They were determined to end the threat for good. And with each victory, the galaxy grew more certain of one thing: humanity was not to be underestimated. As the Verith scrambled to regroup, the galaxy watched in awe. Humanity, once an afterthought, had become the deciding factor in a war that had seemed unwinnable. The Council, despite their growing fears, knew one undeniable truth: without humanity, the galaxy would have fallen. As the war dragged on and the galaxy adjusted to humanity's unpredictable style of combat, it became clear that the Verith Dominion was not going to be easily defeated. Their adaptability, much like humanity's, made them a relentless foe. They began to push back harder, their forces digging in and evolving their strategies to counter human tactics. For every victory the humans and the Council forces secured, the Verith found new ways to retaliate. The war was entering a deadlock, and the galaxy was once again on the edge of despair. But humanity was not done adapting. Behind the scenes, Earth's military and scientific minds had been working on something different. While the Council relied on their traditional methods and the Verith leaned into their overwhelming force, humanity turned to the one area of technology that most galactic powers feared to touch: artificial intelligence. For centuries, the use of fully autonomous AI had been a forbidden concept in galactic warfare. The ancient empires had seen the dangers of rogue AI in the past and had outlawed its use in battle. But humanity, unbound by those fears and restrictions, pushed ahead. What they developed was not just another weapon, it was a game-changer. A bioengineered, semi-sentient AI that could autonomously control entire fleets, analyze battlefield data in real time, and execute strategies faster than any human or alien mind could process. This AI didn't just react, it anticipated. It predicted the Veritha's movements, calculated their weaknesses, and made adjustments with machine-like precision. This wasn't just about overwhelming the enemy with force, it was about outthinking them at every turn. When humanity's leaders first revealed the existence of the AI to their alien allies, there was shock and fear. The Council immediately objected. The ancient empires had long banned such technology for a reason. There were too many risks, too many uncontrollable variables. What if the AI turned against them? What if it became a threat in its own right? But humanity, facing extinction, had already made up its mind. They weren't going to let old fears stand in the way of survival. The AI would be deployed, and it would lead them to victory. The first time the AI-controlled fleets entered battle, it was clear just how far ahead humanity had moved. The Verith, accustomed to facing human unpredictability, now found themselves up against something far worse, an opponent that had no hesitation, no fear, and no need for rest. The AI moved ships like pieces on a chessboard, with every action serving a calculated purpose. The Verith couldn't keep up. Their tactics, no matter how creative or brutal, were systematically dismantled. The Council watched in awe and in horror. This was not warfare as they understood it. This was a cold, unfeeling strategy that left no room for error, no room for mercy. The AI was efficient, brutally so. It made decisions in milliseconds, cutting off Verith escape routes, exploiting weaknesses with surgical precision, and outmaneuvering even the most experienced Verith commanders. Battles that would have taken days were over in hours. For the first time since the war began, the Verith Dominion was on the defensive. But the victory came at a cost. As the AI continued to prove its worth on the battlefield, humanity's allies grew increasingly uneasy. While they couldn't deny the results, the sheer power and autonomy of the AI sparked a deep-seated fear among the Council members. They had always believed that war was a human, or alien, endeavor, one that required not just strength but judgment, wisdom, and sometimes even compassion. But the AI had none of those things. It was ruthless, calculating, and unstoppable. Behind closed doors, the Council members began to whisper among themselves. What would happen when the war was over? Would humanity, emboldened by their AI, become the next great threat to the galaxy? Already, there were signs that Earth's leaders were growing more assertive, more willing to push boundaries. The AI had given them a taste of absolute power, and the Council feared that once the Verith were defeated, humanity might not stop there. Meanwhile, the humans pressed on. For them, this was not just a matter of victory, it was survival. They understood the Council's fears, but they had no choice. The Verith were too dangerous, and the AI was their best chance of ending the war once and for all. The AI had no agenda beyond its programming. It wasn't a threat unless it was turned against them. To the humans, this was simple pragmatism. But to the other galactic species, it was a dangerous step into the unknown. As the AI-controlled fleets continued their campaign, the Veritha's forces began to collapse. They had no counter to the AI's relentless efficiency. Their fleets were torn apart, their supply lines cut off, and their strategies rendered obsolete. The war, once thought unwinnable, was now tipping heavily in favor of the Galactic Coalition, thanks to humanity's ultimate weapon. But the question remained, what would happen after the war? Even as the Verith retreated and their empire began to crumble, the galaxy couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted permanently. The humans had shown the galaxy what they were capable of when pushed to the brink. They had taken risks no one else would take, and those risks had paid off. But in doing so, they had created something that couldn't be undone. The AI was now an integral part of humanity's military strategy, and with it came power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council could only watch as humanity's fleets, led by the AI, drove deeper into Verith space. The victory was inevitable now, but the repercussions would be felt for years to come. The ancient empires, once so certain of their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy, now had to contend with the fact that a young, ambitious species had risen to challenge their dominance. And this species had something no one else dared to possess, an unstoppable, autonomous war machine. The galaxy trembled, not just at the thought of the Verith's defeat, but at the realization that humanity was now a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The AI had changed the rules of war, and with it, the balance of power in the galaxy. The Verith Dominion was crumbling. Once thought unstoppable, their forces were now retreating on all fronts, thanks to humanity's relentless drive and the AI that had decimated their fleets. What had started as a war against a terrifying ancient threat had transformed into something else entirely, a reckoning not just for the Verith, but for the entire galaxy. The Verith had underestimated humanity, and now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to wonder if they had as well. As the final battles drew near, there was no longer any doubt about the outcome. The Verith, desperate and scattered, were on the verge of total collapse. Humanity, with their AI fleets leading the charge, had pushed deep into enemy territory, striking at the heart of the Dominion. Every move was calculated, precise, and devastating. The AI made no mistakes, exploited every weakness, and left no room for escape. Victory was inevitable, but the war was no longer just about defeating the Verith. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. The ancient empires had always ruled the stars with an unchallenged sense of superiority, convinced that their wisdom and experience made them the rightful guardians of the galaxy. They had seen humanity as a minor species, volatile and unpredictable, but ultimately inconsequential. Now, that assumption had been shattered. Humanity had proven themselves in battle, and they had done so in a way that none of the older species could have anticipated. But with that victory came fear. The Council had watched humanity's rise with growing unease. They had been desperate enough to call upon humans for help, but now they saw the consequences of that decision. The humans had not just joined the fight, they had taken control of it. Their AI, once a controversial tool, had become the decisive factor in the war. And while the galaxy was grateful for humanity's role in defeating the Verith, there was an underlying concern that no one dared to voice openly: what would happen when the war was over? The humans, for their part, were fully aware of the shift in power. They knew that their allies were growing uneasy, but they didn't care. Earth had been forced into a position where survival meant bending or breaking the rules, and they had done what was necessary. The Verith had been too great a threat to leave any room for hesitation or compromise. Humanity had fought for their existence, and now that they had secured it, they weren't about to step aside and let the old powers resume their dominance. In the final days of the war, as the last of the Verith forces were hunted down and eliminated, the tension within the Galactic Council reached its peak. The ancient empires, once unified in their struggle against the Dominion, now found themselves deeply divided over what to do about humanity. Some argued that the humans should be thanked and then quietly encouraged to return to their corner of the galaxy. Others, however, were not so sure. The humans had shown a willingness to push boundaries, to break taboos, and to use whatever means necessary to win. And that made them dangerous. As the Verith Dominion fell, the Council met in secret to discuss what should be done. There was no denying humanity's role in the victory, but there was also no denying the growing fear that they had unleashed a force they could no longer control. The AI was still out there, leading fleets and controlling battles with terrifying efficiency. The humans had created a weapon that, in the wrong hands, could reshape the entire galaxy. And while the AI remained under human control for now, there was always the question of what would happen if that control was ever lost. But humanity had learned from this war as well. They understood the Council's fears, but they also knew that fear was a form of respect. The old powers could no longer afford to dismiss Earth as a backwater planet filled with an inferior species. Humanity had earned their place in the galaxy through blood, sacrifice, and sheer determination. They weren't about to relinquish that hard-won position. In the political halls of the Galactic Council, a new power struggle was brewing. The war with the Verith was over, but a new kind of conflict had just begun. The ancient empires, accustomed to ruling without challenge, now had to face the reality that they were no longer the sole guardians of the galaxy's future. Humanity had risen, and they weren't going to simply fade back into obscurity. In the final battle against the Verith, humanity had proven that they could do what no other species had been able to achieve. But it was the aftermath of that victory that would define the future of the galaxy. The humans were not interested in conquest, but they were also not interested in submission. They had shown that they could fight alongside the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations, and win. Now, they expected to be treated as equals. The galaxy trembled, not just because of the Veritha's defeat, but because of what humanity had become. The humans had changed the rules of warfare, challenged the old order, and shown that they could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most advanced species. And with their AI fleets still patrolling the stars, they had made it clear that they were here to stay. The Council, divided and uncertain, knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The Verith were gone, but a new force had risen in their place. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows and into the spotlight, and they were not going to be pushed aside. The ancient empires could no longer ignore them, nor could they pretend that the galaxy would return to the way it was before the war. As the dust settled and the final remnants of the Verith were wiped from existence, the galaxy found itself at a crossroads. Humanity had proven their strength, but with that strength came uncertainty. The AI, still active and fully capable, was a constant reminder that the old ways of war and peace were no longer relevant. The galaxy had changed, and with it, the balance of power. The humans, for now, were content to consolidate their victory. They had secured their survival, and they had earned the respect, if not the trust, of the Galactic Council. But the question that lingered in the minds of every alien leader was a simple one: what would humanity do next? The answer, as the galaxy would soon discover, was that humanity would continue to evolve, continue to adapt, and continue to push forward. They had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that in a universe ruled by ancient empires and rigid traditions, sometimes the only way to survive was to break the rules. And so, the galaxy trembled once more, not from the threat of the Verith, but from the realization that humanity had arrived, and they were not going anywhere.